Hi, everybody. Welcome to Nourish Your Sacred Feminine online class. This month, we're going to be talking all about the hip and heart connection and how opening our hips can open our heart and our emotional realm. So I first want to start by doing a little grounding meditation. So let's go ahead and close our eyes. So find a comfortable position. That could be seated on the floor, seated in your chair, if you're listening to this or watching this, at your desk. But finding something that feels comfortable to where your body can relax. And you can fall into your breath. So again, closing your eyes. Begin noticing your inhale without force, without push. Just noticing where it follows, where it travels in your body. Slowing down, coming to center. Go ahead and notice your sits bones, so the bottom part of your pelvis. I want you to feel their connection to the floor or the chair, whatever you're sitting on. And I want you to just begin rocking them forward and back. Very tiny movement, very tiny rock. But just to start getting some breath and some space in there in your hips. And then go ahead and refocus on the inhale. And I want you to bring the inhale all the way down into your belly space, allowing your belly to expand. And then bringing that inhale deeper into the hip, into the pelvis, down into the legs, into the feet. Really feeling that solid connection to the earth, feeling your foundation, bringing that breath down into the root space. Allowing the inhale to also move into the side body. So as you bring the awareness of your inhale down into your hips, down into your root, you also start playing with the side space. So the side body of the rib cage, of the torso, and like you're widening the hips. So play with that breath, play with that inhale, coming into the deep pelvic space, into the side body space, even into the back body space. And as you exhale, you're letting go of all that no longer serves your highest good. Letting go of tension and of stress. And as you let it go, you can drop down deeper into this moment, this time and space. Go ahead and bring your hands to your heart in prayer position, so palms together. And just take a couple breaths to connect this heart space, this heart center, down to your hips, to the foundation, to your core space. And just play with those two energies working together, bringing your awareness to both these centers of you. Take one more breath. Inhale, big, deep, without force. And go ahead and exhale, releasing your hands and slowly opening your eyes. Beautiful. Okay, so now that we're here, we're grounded, we've slowed down, I want to go ahead and take us into the info aspects of our hip and heart class. So I'm going to show this little slideshow here I made for us. Okay, so hip and heart connection. That's all we're going to talk about today. We're really going to dive into not only the physical structures of the structure of the hip, but also the heart space and the energetic and the emotional realm. So we view the body as a holistic aspect here. So getting to know your hips. Here's an example, a little diagram of our hip space, right? So hips are the support of your body. It is the main support, the main foundational space that holds all of our body weight. And as you can see here, this is the whole pelvis, right? So all of this is the pelvis, and then these are the hip joints here. So this pelvis space right here, this big bone in the back, is the sacrum. The sacrum is the base of the spine. So as you can see already, what's going on in the hips is going to affect the rest of the back, the rest of the spine, up into the head. So you can see how it's all connected, right? So again, the hip joint right here are the biggest joints in the body. And these joints are called ball and socket joints. So with a ball and socket joint, you have the head of the ball, right? The head of the femur, that round space, and it's in the socket. So in the little cave of this hip bone here. So the full range of motion that your hip can do is so important for function. And it's so important to keep this range of motion so that way the joint stays healthy, because there's so much going on in the anatomy of the hip, not only structurally with muscles and tendons and ligaments. There's like a complex system all going on here, but also with all the nerves that come out of the spinal cord, out through these little holes at the sacrum that basically radiate all the way down. They control the organs, digestion, colon, elimination, all the way down to the feet, your legs, all of it. So this area, our hips, super vital, super intricate, but yummy at the same time, right? It's like so important for our function and mobility. So here's just a little diagram for that. So now I want to look a little bit more into this hip joint. I'm just going to move me up a bit. Okay, so like I said, you have your femoral head. So this bone right here is your femur. That's the top part of your leg. That is your biggest, big leg bone, right? The biggest bone in the body. So this bone comes into this little socket here that is part of your pelvis, right? And remember, the pelvis is part of the sacrum and part of the spine. So this bone, it fits nicely into this joint, and this is your ball and socket joint. This is the hip. This is the stuff we're going to get into here. Okay, so now that we talked about the structure of the hip, I want to go ahead and talk about the energetic aspect of our body. So there's something called chakras. If you don't know what a chakra is, it's basically an energy wheel, they call it. It's out of the Hindu religion, I believe. And so anyway, there's 7 major chakras. Each chakra has an emotional aspect to it, and they're little wheels that we want to keep moving. So when they get blocked or stagnant, energy gets stored, and then it causes all the physical part of our body to start breaking down, or we have pain. So it's all connected. I wanted to show this image here because I want you to see how two of the base chakras, so our chakra system starts from the bottom up. So the big root space, the earth space are these bottom three chakras, and then the spirit space are the top three chakras. And our heart chakra is the middle chakra. So our root chakra is right at the base of our perineum, or our pelvis. So that is where we connect with the earth. That is our basic trust and our foundation. Mostly when we talk about the hips and the chakra related to the hips, we're talking about the sacral chakra, which is also known as the sexual chakra. And this is all about sexuality and creativity. So this is where our reproductive organs are, sitting in that hip space. So when we talk about the chakras and the energy systems and the emotions that go around with it, this is super important to remember that there are actually energy wheels coming through us because we are energy. And as it moves up, then we also have our heart chakra. And our heart chakra is where we have love and healing. And it's our emotional, and it's our connection to the world. So we're going to go a little bit more into the sacral chakra because it is the one most associated with the hip, like I said. So here we have the emotional and central movement of our life. This is where we open to pleasure. We learn how to go with the flow. It's all about pleasure, sensuality, the emotions, intimacy, our desires, right? So, and the second chakra that's located just below your belly button, so in that hip space, we use it, it's part of our foundation and how we connect with others, our partnerships and relationships, what they mean to us, how we interact, and what motivates them. So it also helps us learn that when we let go of control of life, right? When we let go of this control, like, oh, it has to make everything perfect, and we just let our hips especially like start releasing, our reproductive organs become less tense, and we're open to experience more pleasure and sexuality and sensuality, because we're open in this space. So it helps every relationship, especially our intimate ones and our personal ones. So this is the sacral chakra. This is the second chakra, right in the hips. So our heart chakra, like I said, it's right in our center space. So this is where the feelings of love emanate. Emotions like joy and devotion and generosity, it's all coming from our heart. And it's, like I said before, it's the balance between our earth space and our spirit space. So it's where the two come together, and we can bring in all that we're getting from this intuitive upper realm and meet it with this earthly being, right? So when that harmony happens, we're able to feel that pulse of the universe and connect with others from this truth, the truth space, which is our heart. So how are the hips and heart connected? Hips are the storage space for a lot of negative emotions or pent up feelings. By doing hip openers like that I will show you, we can release the stagnation that no longer serves us, of these emotions, of the feelings that are kind of just been lodged in there. And we can clear the space for things that actually we want to work towards and get insights and creativity. And then with this space comes a sense of lightness, and we can release our hearts and they shine brighter, right? So as we release this pent up hip space, it actually can bring up all that energy into our heart. So that's kind of that's where the connection is. And then physically what happens, so I want to talk a little bit about fight or flight response, because in fight or flight, that's a huge aspect to our hips and why they store emotions. So when we are in fight or flight, when we're in a super stressful situation, or we're scared, there's a lot of fear, our automatic response in that is obviously run, right? It's like we're either going to take off or we're going to like come inward. So we go into this fetal position automatically and we bring our hip to our heart. So anytime, think of the last time you got scared. It's like, right? There's this closing in, this, it can be a nanosecond, but that energy starts getting stored in the hips. And all of that stomach dropping feeling, right? It just drops right into the hips. And oftentimes we don't release it. So it just gets stuck there. So that's an aspect of how the hips, and that's a way the hips store the emotional, the negative emotions because of this response that our body naturally does. And then without giving it space to release the emotions, by opening the hips, it just gets stored in there, and over time, just tighter and tighter, more stagnation. So when we open hips, there can be a lot of emotions that come up during this time because of all the stuff that's been stuck there. So tight hips in general are not good, no bueno, because they obviously restricts our movement. We cannot walk anymore. Our gait changes. When we start having hip problems, it ruins our function, right? And how we move in the world. Can create pain in the low back, in our knees, because again, the knee is a joint, and that top part of the joint is the femur, and the femur is part of that ball socket joint of our hip. So it affects the knees, can affect the hamstrings, which is the back part of the leg, and then the sacroiliac joints are where that sacrum bone that I showed you and the iliac bones, so there's a joint there and it can start playing with that. So, which is not good because it can cause a lot of pain and a lot of nerve damage too. Again, the tight hips can store all of this unreleased emotion. And then over time, with tight hips, it can start affecting your digestion, your elimination, the pelvic position, which is completely related to your spine, your neck, how your head sits. So your whole alignment, as your pelvic position starts moving, you'll start getting pain in other areas, low back and knee joints, and then, tight hips, like I said, limited mobility. Not good. We want to be able to move, right, while we're on this planet. So it's important to pay attention to our hips. So how did we get tight hips, right? How did this whole epidemic come about? Well, we have a huge sitting culture, obviously, as you know. We sit at desks, we sit in cars, we're not often walking around, we're not squatting as much as we used to, like what our hips are meant to do. So our legs are constantly, in that sitting position. And so our hips are at this 90-degree angle. Here are our legs, here's the rest of our body, and this 90-degree thing that's keeping all of our hip joint really tight. So we're not allowing it to have this full range of motion most of the time because we're sitting, right? So here's our legs, here's our back, sitting. Other things that cause it: traumatic events, falls, injuries, car accidents, anything that might have gotten into the hips and affected one of the aspects, the anatomical aspects. So like a muscle tear, a ligament tear, tendons, nerve aspect. There's so much going on in the hips. So traumatic events can create tighter hips. Sexual trauma is a huge aspect of tight hips. When we have been traumatized or when we have been abused sexually, an automatic response is to tighten everything in our hips, in our pelvis, in our sacrum, because we're not safe, right? We don't feel safe because we've been penetrated, we've been abused, we've been taken advantage of. So often the hip space can also be holding some old traumas or that we just might not have looked at. So I also want you to be aware of that. So as we get into the hips, it's not just some easy peasy thing like, oh, let's just open the hip joint. Stuff can come up while you do this. A lot of repressed emotions and then denied pleasures. So be mindful and aware that as you work in the hips, that this stuff can come up but that it's okay, it's releasing, and you're safe, right? You're safe now. So that's important to remember. So emotions that can get stored in the hips, we kind of talked about some of them. There's a lot of fear with that fight or flight response, pin down, get stuck in the hips. Anxiety, if we're really anxious, we're holding in our hips, we're holding our joints together. If we're really sad, there can be a lot of sadness stored in the hips, and also anger. Unexpressed anger can be huge. I highly recommend, if you need to express anger, always do it in a safe way. And I'll be talking about that more, of just releasing emotions that can be really hard. And you want to do kind of in the privacy of your own home. So as you do these hip openers, just be aware that these might be stored in there. And again, traumatic events, or even just small little events over and over again, they can cause these emotions to get stored, and then we have to bring them to the surface so they can get released, which is a good thing, right? We just have to be prepared. So, okay, so now I want to go into just the quick, we'll go back to the PowerPoint, but now I want to just do some quick hip openers so that you can actually see the movement and you can take them with you and do them, throughout the day. So I'm going to move the chair and I'm going to move the screen so you can see me. The light is kind of strange. Okay, so the first hip opener we're going to do is a standing one. So you can hold a bench or a chair if you need to for balance. But what all you're going to do is bring one leg up and you're flexing your foot. So your knee is coming up towards your chest, and then you're opening it out. Foot is flexed, you can see. Opening it out. Like if there's a chair right under here and you're trying to bring it over the chair and then around. Okay, so again, one more time, it's coming forward and up, out, and down. Okay, so we're gonna do that the other way. So now from the bottom, you open out. So you're opening the hip, right? That ball and socket joint, that femur is rotating. You're coming up. You're coming over that chair and then releasing down. So you could just do that again. Open the hip, bring it up. That knee is high, foot is flexed, down. So you can do that with both sides. So again, we're going to start up, open, down, up, open, down, and then rotate back this way. So super important to get mobility in that hip joint and getting this full range of motion in the roundhouse, right? Great hip openers. Really being mindful of the motion coming from the hip and not just the knee. So that's why it's important to keep that foot flexed. Be very intentional with the knee. So the second one I want to show you is one you've probably seen, and we're going to come down to the floor here. So give me a second. Okay. So this second one is a simple lunge. With the lunge, you can always have something under your knee if you need a little extra cushion. Foot is always flexed, back toes flexed, knee 90 degrees, foot down on the floor, pelvis facing forward, okay? And we're just gonna come forward and back. So it's little pulses. You can move your foot forward if you need to really get into that stretch, because you're stretching the hip that is on the side of the leg that's on the floor, okay? So this is a good lunge. So you can hold. So as you do this, remember the hips are staying center. I like to put my elbows down so I can make sure. So we don't want the hips to be doing anything weird, pointing anywhere else. Point them center, and then pulse. And really open up this hip, right? This is the part that's usually in the sitting position, like over here. So now you're going to just switch, do the other side, little pulses, little movements. Such a great hip opener. So that one's an easy one to do as well. So then I want you to come all the way down. Another really beautiful, easy hip opener is just the diamond shape here. So instead of a full straddle, right, which you could also do, but this one is a little bit easier, especially if you have really tight hips. So bringing the heels together, toes apart, flexing the feet. Notice where your hips are on the earth. Go ahead and rock the pelvis, and you can just start the leaning forward. Leaning forward with the pelvis first, engaging putting energy in the heels to where it turns on the little bit outside part of the hip, so it keeps the knee safe. So you're not just collapsing in. There's a tone to the stretch. So we're toning as we're creating flexibility, right? Beautiful. So that one is amazing as well. And then another great pose from yoga is the pigeon pose. So this one, basically your one leg is all the way back, long, toes tucked under. Make sure the toes tucked under. Your knee is on the floor, and so is your upper leg. The leg that is in front of you, you point the toe towards the back. Your knee comes all the way out to the side, okay? And then this is the pigeon pose. So you come down and slowly rocking, and you open this whole hip space here. So you can go all the way down to the floor and even all the way down head to the floor. So that is just another option and a huge hip opener. You can do this before bed. It's so good to release any kind of emotion. And then of course, switch legs. So I want to show you that this front leg is really, you want to make sure the toe is pointed back, and then it's out to the side, right? And then the back foot tucked under, flexed on the floor, release down. Okay. Okay, and then the last little pose I want to do is for the heart. So the heart chakra is so important, but we have to be very mindful of any kind of back bends. So take this one very slow as well. And this is just a baby cobra. So you're, again, feet flexed. I don't know if you guys can see me here. Okay, there. So feet flexed, hands, shoulders, elbows under shoulders, palms facing down. Gaze is going to be down and in front of your palms just a bit. And then what you're going to do is traction your elbows back just a tiny bit. Like you're bringing your mat closer, the carpet closer. And then that traction opens up the heart space. So we're not doing a big cobra. It's just a baby cobra to open the front, the chest, the heart, just a little bit, okay? So that's a good heart opener. Awesome. So those are a few hips. Let me move this screen. So those are some really easy hip openers. Another one you can do that I forgot to show you is a child's pose. So basically let me just show you real quick. Your feet are toes together, knees very wide, and then you just come down onto the floor. So that is a really beautiful hip opener, allowing all this space to release. Okay. Okay, now, if there's ever any questions about those, you can always email me, make a comment on this video. And I just want to do the last little bit here, which is the, oops, let's see, where did it go? The take action now. So I want to share with you, hold on. Okay, here we go. From current slide. Is it working? Okay, so emotions. Okay, so take action now. So I always encourage, once we learn this stuff, not to keep it in our brain, but to put it in our body, put it into action. So the next time you feel afraid, notice what your body position does. And notice where your hips are. Notice where your heart is. Notice all these things. Try to get into the body, and it also helps the fear move. And then do a hip opener to help move the emotion after. So if you have a really strong experience or even just a little thing, right? That's why it's so good to do hip openers in the morning and in the evening, because you can really release any pent up little bits that you might not have noticed of fear and anxiety throughout the day. And if you're at work, for example, if you're feeling stressed, do a simple hip opener. bring the leg up, open, do that roundhouse one, right? It's a simple, standing at your desk, 2 minutes, and you can completely start noticing a difference in opening that space. So as I also am a journaler and believe in writing as a tool to help move emotions and a therapy. So I always like to give some kind of reflection question that you can take and journal. One of the questions is, have you had an injury or trauma in your hip space? So have you been in a car accident, sexual trauma, anything going on, or an injury, right? You got hurt at a game that you played, you're an athlete, whatever. So if you have, I want you to kind of write about it. What was it? And what emotions come up for you when you start thinking about it? Were you scared? Was there stress? Was there sadness, grief, that you couldn't move this, or whatever the situation was? Anger, right? You could be angry at the time. And then the last question is kind of a fun one. And when I ask these kinds of questions, it's like, before you answer it, try to find a place that you can just sit and ground and connect to your hips. So if your hips could talk, what would they say is stored inside there? So let yourself kind of go crazy. Whatever stories start coming up, just really respect it and write it all down. So you can play with those reflection questions and remember the tips and remember the actions to really open that hip space. Huge, vital emotional releases, connection to the heart. Beautiful. Okay, y'all. So now that I just want to do a little closing prayer for our class. We've learned a lot. I showed you a lot. If there's any questions, always, always, always feel free to email me, email me, or find me on Instagram or whatever the case is. Comment on this. And just for our closing prayer, I just want to say we can go ahead and close our eyes, find the heart space, touch your heart, put your left hand on your heart and your right hand on your lower abdomen where your hips are. Okay, I just want you to close your eyes, connect with the space under your hands. And I'm just going to say the prayer that I made for us today. So I pray for deep, true connection to my physical, emotional, and energetic body, and release anything that no longer serves me at this time. May I walk this earth with awareness and light. Thank you all so much for joining me for this class. Again, I am open to any feedback. If this is helpful, if you want to know more, anything at all, I would love to hear from you. So yes, you can always find me, MoniqueGomez.com. Sign up for my email, my weekly newsletter, and I'm starting to do more body counseling sessions, basically spirit body counseling sessions. So if you're interested in that, there's a place on my website that you can fill out a form and we can start an initial intake. All right, y'all, we'll have a great rest of your day. And yeah, we'll see you again soon. Take care.